Hey guys, it's Miss Madison. I wanted to say hi and I also wanted to give you guys some review for your AP test coming up. So it should be pretty fun. We're going to be looking at basic overview of what's going to be on the test, practicing a couple of things, some reminders, and giving you some practices in case you want further practice. So it should be pretty easy. You guys only have one essay to do, so let's get started. All right, so the first thing I want to point out is the AP Lang Test College Board site. I highly recommend checking this out. I put a link here on the document I sent you, and they will have AP exam schedules and just updates for how to take the exam. So make sure you're going there and checking that out. Our particular test is Wednesday, May 20th. It's at noon. And so you want to get up and kind of get going and get on there a little before noon. So like I would get on around 11:30. They recommend getting on half an hour early. And then it's a 40-minute timed write with just 5 minutes to upload. So that's the timing of it. And again, that's what we practice. You guys would have normally 3 essays to write. This time you only have 1, so that's great. So what we're looking at doing here is the 4 main things you want to remember whenever you're doing rhetorical analysis. The first one is context or situation. You want to be thinking about what is the situation at the time, what was the country going through, what were the people going through, who's the audience, and what are the needs of the audience, right? So like, are the FDR, for example, giving a speech on the radio to a nation looking to get out of the Great Depression, like the needs of the audience is very different from, Madeleine Albright giving a speech to a bunch of women's, at like a women's college, right? So be thinking like, what are the needs of the audience? What's the current situation that they're talking in? And then you want to look at like, okay, what are they really trying to do? What is their major goal or intention? Obviously, they're using all this rhetoric to try and, communicate something or get something across to someone. And what is that goal or intent? And then strategies, like that should always kind of come up as you're looking at their purpose. You're like, this part of their purpose is really strong, and like this is the strategy I see them taking. So when it comes to strategies, you want to be thinking about larger, like rhetorical moves. Do they start off by establishing their relationship with the person, or do they start off by establishing their credibility? Then you want to think like other larger rhetorical moves, like the use of humor or sarcasm. Or maybe they start with first person I's and we's and then they switch to second person you's. Those kinds of larger rhetorical moves kind of help you kind of grasp as they progress through the speech. And I highly recommend actually doing it in chronological order. So think about that as well as you're analyzing. You want to be thinking about what did they start off with? What did they do first? What did they do second? What did they do third? And so chronological order is really important for that. I would recommend organizing your analysis that way. And then also, obviously, once you get those larger kind of big moves that they make, are they using stories? Are they using statistics? Like, what are their bigger moves? Then you can look at their more smaller devices that come up, right? And how those tiny devices kind of impact or help move that rhetorical goal along the line. So things like allusions, rhetorical questions, imagery, that kind of thing. Let's check out. So I know you guys probably remember we did like speaker occasion, audience purpose, strategies, and tone, soapstone. There's also pig sack. If you prefer saying pig sack, you can totally use this one as well. These are just good reminders, little just like, hey, don't forget to look at this kind of stuff. But the main thing is to be looking at context, audience, author's purpose, and then the strategies. Just a reminder, when it comes to strategies, there's 2 big ones, right? There's diction, like the kinds of words that they're using, and then there's also syntax, so sentence structures. So kind of be aware of that as well. What are the kind of larger word choices that they're making? And then also what kind of patterns do they have, and how do those patterns sort of create a different message or a vibe? Okay, good. Let's check out the rubric. So they started using this rubric last year. So if you want to check out any sample essays from last year, you'll see that this rubric is in use for that. Okay, good. So let's look at the rubric. So you'll notice for the rhetorical analysis, again, this document, you'll have to scroll down to find question 2. We're looking at rhetorical analysis only. We have to do 1 essay. You got this. So the first thing is that you want to definitely respond to the prompt with your thesis up front. You want a defendable thesis, right? Explaining the author's purpose and really going into detail on the context up front so that we can really understand like what was the author trying to do And then also, what are the strategies? So with your thesis, always have like, what's the author's goal or intention, and then what are their strategies? Put that up front in the thesis. And then the second thing you'll notice is row B. This is where you get that commentary. And you really want to think about specific evidence, like specific quotes that they had and how those things are driving through their purpose, and what's the function of those quotes to accomplish their purpose, right? So this quote really accomplishes this purpose. Explaining those kinds of rhetorical choices and rhetorical bends that they take in order to achieve their goal. So that's row B. And then the last point really comes from three different things. It could be that you're just having a better style. So the way you're describing it is more vivid, a little bit more control over the language, more dependent clauses, a little bit more flair with your own style, adding rhetorical questions and those kinds of things. It could also be just that the content is deeper, right? So the rhetorical choices that the author's making you're really noticing the significance of those choices. And you're really talking about the purpose and function of their choices for their goal, right? So it says explaining a purpose or function of the passage's complexities or tensions. So this is just deeper reading, right? So making sure you really get the piece. And it might be that you want to take a hot second and really read that carefully. I like to read it once just to get a feel for it. And if you have time, depending on how fast you can write, you might give yourself an extra read of it. It just kind of depends on your own writing and how, if you feel like you don't understand the piece, don't start writing until you understand it. So I would read it again, and it would be better if you understood the piece. You're going to write way better, even if you have to type a little faster. I would recommend making sure you really read and understand it. So let's look at a couple more things. So I did post a link to the style checklist from our class. So if you're interested in that, just a reminder, like adding, adjectives, appositive phrases, extending your sentences, compound complex sentences, all of that kind of thing, playing with your own style. This is just a good reminder, like, oh, I should add some of these to my writing. It helps deepen your style. So that's on there. And then I wanted to go ahead and do a couple practices. So the first one we're going to look at is from the 2014 test, and it's Abigail Adams writing a letter to her son. So let's look at that. You have to scroll down, remember, because we're doing question 2. All right, good. So here we are on question 2. Notice it's suggested time 40 minutes. Your time will just be 40 minutes. And so yeah, let's look at this example. In the following letter, Abigail Adams, 1744 to 1818, writes to her son John Quincy Adams, who's traveling abroad with his father, John Adams, a United States diplomat and later the country's second president. Read the letter carefully. Then in a well-developed essay, analyze the rhetorical strategies Adams uses to advise her son. Support your analysis with specific references to the text. Okay, good. So from here, all of the background in your head should be coming out. Like, what was the country going through at this time, right? It was fairly new and it was just developing, and we're talking about people who are, maybe nervous about the new country, and there's a lot of challenges going on at the time, right? And we know that this is a mother, right? So it's Abigail Adams writing to her son. So you have all the stuff you know about how moms talk to their kids. You have that in your head, right? Like, that's the context. So like, how is she going to be talking to her kid? Think about how your mom talks to you and like use that as sort of a reference. And we know this is a letter. It's not like a speech. It's not direct. So we know that because it's a letter, that's going to change the way she's able to talk and the kinds of things she's going to say. And we also know that we're looking at analyzing her strategies as she's advising her son. So we know that the purpose here is to advise her son, and she wants to give him some kind of advice. So we're going to be looking to figure out like what that advice is, and that's probably her purpose, right? Like, her goal is to give her son this advice, whatever it is. And we need to support our analysis with specific references from the text. Okay, cool. We know it's January, and it's 1780, and it says, "My dear son." So already I would be paying attention to just that noticing of, she doesn't say my son, she says my dear son. What's the effect when someone says that? It makes it a little different, right? It makes them maybe feel more loved and maybe cared for, kind of opening up with that, like, I'm here to care for you kind of thing. I'm going to go ahead and read it and then kind of talk through some of the thinking that would go on in my head if I was going to analyze this piece. Let's go ahead and get started. So I hope you have had no occasion, either from enemies or the dangers of the sea, to repent your second voyage to France. If I had thought your reluctance arose from proper deliberation, or that you were capable of judging what was most for your own benefit, I should not have urged you to accompany your father and brother when you appeared so averse to the voyage. All right, what's going on here? Already you're like, oh, it's talking like 1800s. So notice this, like, hope you have no occasion to repent your second voyage. If I had thought your reluctance arose from proper deliberation, right, I should not have urged you. So what? What do we know from this? He didn't want to go on this trip to France, and she was like, oh, you got to go to France, right? So on some level, the situation at the time is he's probably kind of pissed. He's probably like, Mom, you made me go on this trip. Well, okay, let's keep reading and see what happens next. You, however, readily submitted to my advice, and I hope will never have occasion yourself, nor give me reason to lament it. Okay, good. So never mind. He was like super okay with it. He was like, all right, I'm going to go to France. Mom wants me to go. And he was all right with it. So maybe he's not super mad. Your knowledge of the language must give you greater advantages now than you could possibly have reaped while ignorant of it. And as you increase in years, you will find your understanding opening and daily improving. Ooh, so she's definitely what is she doing here? She's giving him some kind of a compliment and talking about how he has greater advantages. And so you might just kind of think about that as an opening strategy. She's kind of dealing with him, trying to negotiate their relationship and make him feel supported and make him feel like he has power, right? He has the ability to do what he wants with his control over language. Then she goes on to say, some author that I have met with compares a judicious traveler to a river that increases its stream the further it flows from its source, or to certain springs which, running through rich veins of minerals, improve their qualities as they pass along. It will be expected of you, my son, that as you are favored with superior advantages under the instructive eye of a tender parent, your improvement should bear some proportion to your advantages. So we have two lines here. We've got this metaphor, this simile, comparing his travels to a stream, and the more he travels and the farther he goes, the deeper it's going to get, right? Sort of justifying her decision to send him to France. And so we have this metaphor kind of helping him like feel good about that decision to keep traveling. And then there's the second part going on here where she's talking about how because he has these superior advantages and these great parents, he should have even more improvement, right? So there's some expectation that's kind of put on there. It's a pretty powerful line. Like as your advantages increase, so should your improvement. No pressure there. Kind of intense. Nothing is wanting with you but attention, diligence, and steady application. Nature has not been deficient. So here we have a lot like high power, also high demand, right? So nothing is wanting with you but these things. Another powerful line you could look at. Nature has not been deficient, right? So another compliment. So here she is complimenting him as an overall strategy, this opening section, really complimenting him and trying to assuage his feelings about going to France. Let's see what she does next. It says, these are times in which a genius would wish to live. Oh. So now she's switching gears a little bit, talking more about the times. So we have kind of a shift here in focus. So you might note that if you're analyzing. It is not in the still calm of life or the repose of a Pacific station that great characters are formed. Would Cicero have shown so distinguished an orator if he had not been roused, kindled, and inflamed by the tyranny of Catiline, Verus, and Mark Antony? All right, good. So what device do we have here? We've got this reference to Cicero, and he's being compared to Cicero, right? She's comparing him and his trials to what Cicero had to go through. This is technically an allusion. If you can't remember what the title of the device is, at least note that she's referring to someone famous and comparing him to that, right? Technically, she's using an allusion here. It says, the habits of a vigorous mind are formed in contending with difficulties. All history will convince you of this, and that wisdom and penetration are the fruit of experience, not the lessons of retirement and leisure. So what is she saying here? I think this is really where she's getting into her purpose. Can you guys sense that? So the habits of a vigorous mind are formed in contending with difficulties. All your trials are actually going to pay off. This is how you become great. All history will convince you of this. So here we have a little personification going on, right? The history, all of history talks about this. And notice how this is really placing him in line with history and saying, you're one of the greats. Like you're born to be a hero. History, you're a part of this historical sort of story and narrative, and history is talking to you. So again, the way she's sort of positioning him with the way she's talking, her language choices are positioning him to be great. Then she says, great necessities call out great virtues. So kind of a wonderful example of repetition here, right? We have that great necessities call out great virtues. And just notice the pattern of that speech. I think that really gets into maybe a big part of her purpose, right? You're going to be challenged a lot, but that's going to make you better. When a mind is raised and animated by scenes that engage the heart, then those qualities which would otherwise lie dormant wake into life and form the character of a hero and a statesman. War, tyranny, and dissolution are the scourges of the Almighty, and ought no doubt to be deprecated. Yet it is your lot, my son, to be an eyewitness to these calamities in your own native land, and at the same time to owe your existence among a people who have made a glorious defense of their invaded liberties, and who, aided by a generous and powerful ally, with the blessings of heaven, will transmit this inheritance to ages yet unborn. Holy cow! If my mom talked to me like this, I would be like, whoa. So basically, what is she doing here? She's saying that all of this stuff that's happened to the country, this is definitely like a call to patriotism. She's trying to use this idea of the country and the struggles that the country has gone through in order to explain to him how he's important in the story for this country. And so basically, like your entire existence has been made because people sacrificed for this country that you are now supposed to go and help. So there's definitely a call to patriotism through here. And I would definitely be looking at like analyzing how does she use patriotism to sort of motivate and inspire him. It also puts quite a lot of pressure on him, I would say. Nor ought to be one of the least of your incitements toward exerting every power and faculty of your mind that you have a parent who has taken so large and active a share in this contest. So I don't know if you guys noticed, maybe that's maybe a bit of a guilt trip there where she's like, I have also, given so much for you and discharged the trust reposed in him with so much satisfaction as to be honored with the important embassy at which present calls him abroad. So like your parents have done much for you and now you have a lot being asked of you. The strict and inviolable regard you have ever paid to truth gives me pleasing hopes that you will not swerve from her dictates. So notice we have here some personification with truth and her dictates, but add justice, fortitude, and every manly virtue which can adorn a good citizen. Do honor to your country, and render your parents supremely happy, particularly your ever affectionate mother, Abigail Adams. So calls to action here, just sort of bringing forth the country wants you to do it, I want you to do it. I would definitely analyze the syntax through here. There's a lot of asyndeton, and just in the calls to action, like do this and do that. Okay, good. So as we look at this letter, I would definitely be analyzing how does she use the simile down here? How does she use the allusions? What is her overall goal or purpose? If you had to put your thesis statement into this, like what do you think she's trying to do for her son? She's obviously giving advice. What do you think she's trying to do? I would say she's definitely trying to motivate him, but also create sort of not only does she want to inspire him and build him up, but also create this sort of expectation of you must do great things and do great things for your country and do great things for me. So it's a pretty powerful message, and rhetorically, I think she starts off kind of sweet and soft, and then by the end, it's very powerful, and she switches gears and moves more toward like the nation is calling you to do this, history is calling you to do this, and then she ends with like, and I'm calling you to do this. So it's a powerful speech, or it's a powerful letter. If you guys could look at the student response, you can see underneath there, you'll see a link to an essay that scored a 5 or a 6. I can't remember, it was very high. It would have been like an 8 or a 9 on the old rubric. So you can see a solid example here of a student analyzing, looking at the rhetorical devices she uses and the rhetorical strategies she uses to accomplish her task. So I would check that out. The next one I posted for you guys, this is from 2009. This is a question that I thought was interesting to kind of share. If you can check it out, you have to scroll down. I think it's like on page 10 or 11. Okay, so this one I thought was interesting to check out as well if you get a chance. I would read through this. It's basically a satire. And I know we looked at satire and you guys are familiar with it, but it's kind of, this is an interesting prompt for the reason that it has two different sort of approaches. One is satirizing the environmentalists, and one is satirizing the non-environmentalists, basically. So kind of pay attention to that. I think it's an interesting example. I also posted a student response to that prompt. And then I also just posted all of the AP Lang prompts that you can check out. And obviously you're looking for this test just to look at question 2s. You can see 2018, 2019. I would recommend checking out this one. If you click into it, you'll find 2019 is it's a letter from Gandhi to the British, and it's it's right here, so you can check that out. And there's also, where is it? Boop, boop, boop. There's also a student response to that prompt. So you have these 3 different sort of prompts with student responses for each one, so you can see what other people wrote about them. And then I would just recommend checking out your own examples, right? We did our Gettysburg analysis. There's the death of Benny Paret, the innocent at Ringside. All of those are on Google Classroom. I would check those out. And also, I'm happy to check out your timed writes. So if you feel like you want to practice on any of the above prompts, and you want to just give yourself 40 minutes and just see what comes out and do this process of practicing rhetorical analysis, I'm happy to look at those and give you feedback and advice. So feel free to send me your practices at lmadison@psdschools.org. Okay, guys, good luck. You got this. Email me if you have questions. I'll see you soon.